Well, welcome to another flip video lesson with me, the Guru. This flip video lesson will be about the fall of the Compromise of 1850. Yeah. This will cover lesson 21.6a. See the A right there? That's because this lesson is very, very long, man. So hey, let's go to the next slide. You groovy? With the Guru? So, the Compromise of 1850 made no one happy, just like this mask here. They had happiness on the outside, but on the inside was unhappiness, yeah. Henry Clay, the maker, hoped that it would make people happy, but it didn't. The following events are the downfall, you see here? That caused the fall of the Compromise, and because I'm the Guru, I'm going to do it to a ditty that I made just especially for the 8th grade and whoever else is watching this video. Oh yeah. The following events, yeah, made people sad, yeah, and made them wish that the Compromise was gone, yeah. You see the Fugitive Slave Act, yeah, and Uncle Tom's Cabin, yeah. Don't forget Kansas-Nebraska Act. Yeah. And finally, yeah, we got violence. Yeah. In Kansas and the Congress. That's not good. All right. I'm out of here because I'm the Guru who's on vacay.
A very casual Mr. Wolfman as it is. I'm going to take up the rest of this flip video from Mr. Guru, who was so kind in filling in for me while I got my tie ready, because it can't be a flip video without Mr. Wolfman wearing a collared shirt or a tie. So let's start now with one of the first events that started the downfall of the Compromise of 1850, and that would be the Fugitive Slave Act. Now, the Fugitive Slave Act required, yes, I'm using the word required, the return of runaway slaves. Now, this became a problem because any African American, whether they were a fugitive or a runaway, or even if they were free, could be sent back to the South solely on the word of anyone claiming to be his or her owner. So if you have Mr. Bill here, who's a free African American, and then you have Mr. Tim, who is a Southerner, and goes, "Hey, you're my slave." And this guy goes, "What? I was born a freedman," or "I'm just free." He go, "Nope, he's a slave." And so then the slave catchers could take him and, well, haul him away, just because this guy said he was a slave. Now, the next part of the Fugitive Slave Act, which really frustrated people, especially Northerners, was the fact that runaway slaves who were caught were to stand trial. Now, that's not bad, standing trial, that's part of the American way. However, they stood trial in front of a special commissioner. It wasn't a jury. It wasn't a judge who was appointed or elected, but a special commissioner. Now, that totally goes against a lot of the precepts and parts of the Constitution. Furthermore, if a slave, a fugitive slave, was returned to slavery, the person or persons who caught them would get paid, whether it was $10 or it could be more. Now, if that fugitive went free after they were caught, the person who originally caught them would be paid $5. Now, Northerners saw this provision as a full-on bribe, to bribe people to catch these human beings who had run away from slavery and then had somehow gotten caught again. The final two spots that frustrated people about the Fugitive Slave Act was the fact that U.S. citizens and U.S. Marshals were required to help capture people who had escaped from slavery. If one of these people refused to aid in the capture of a fugitive, or if they interviewed with the arrest of a slave, or even if they tried to free a slave who was already in custody, they could potentially receive a huge fine, or they could get jail time. So all these emotions and these events were ideas about the Fugitive Slave Act that both the North and in some aspects maybe the South didn't like, because a lot of these were enforced in the North. So this was the first event that started the downfall of the Compromise of 1850, reactions to the Fugitive Slave Act. between the northern reactions and the southern reactions, because as you can imagine, they had two different reactions. First off, in the north, there was widespread outrage. Thousands of northerners were convinced fully that slavery should not be allowed in the new Western territories, such as the Oregon Territory. In fact, 8 northern states enacted or started what they called personal liberty laws that prohibited or stopped state officials from helping return runaways that had been caught. They also allowed these fugitive slaves that had been caught the opportunity to have a trial with a jury. Also, free African American communities responded by giving help or sanctuary to fugitive slaves. And they also established vigilance committees to protect fugitive slaves from hired kidnappers, because there were slave hunters looking to capture these runaway slaves. We talk about how the southern states felt about how the fugitive slave law was being handled. And as you can imagine, they weren't very pleased with the fact that northerners were not taking the law very seriously. In fact, they regarded any attempt at stopping or obstructing the return of fugitive slaves as a direct violation against the Constitution and federal law. So if you take how the North felt about the Fugitive Slave Act and mix it with how the South felt about it, well, again, you can kind of see how the Compromise of 1850 was starting to fall apart. The next thing we'll talk about is another event that you wouldn't think could start the downfall of it, but it definitely shows you how culture can begin the downfall of law. Bob's Cabin. The book was written in 1852 by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Now, this woman, while living for a short while in Cincinnati, was exposed to actual runaway slaves, and it was through these encounters that she wrote this novel, a heart-wrenching tale that portrayed slave families and how they were forced to cope with separation from each other through masters selling families to different places. It shows a character, Uncle Tom, mourning for the family that he's forced to leave. The novel also takes the perspective of the fact that slavery brought out the worst in white masters, and that slavery led these men and women to what's called moral atrocities, terrible acts that they would not normally commit on any other occasion. The opinions on Uncle Tom's Cabin varied from the North to South as much as opinions and reactions to the Fugitive Slave Act. In the North, readers became very aware of the horrors of slavery on a much more personal level than they ever had before, because through this story and the subsequent plays that were created from the novel, people really got to see how families were torn apart and they saw slaves as human beings. The South, however, was infuriated. They said that the book was irresponsible, that it was full of distortions, which is another word for misinterpretations or misrepresentations or just exaggeration. And they said the book was full of overstatements. So as you can see, Uncle Tom's Cabin again is riling the North and the South up to the point where they're starting to see terrible things within the Compromise of 1850. And by terrible, I mean different parts of the Compromise that neither side liked. It's time to end this flip video. Please go to Edmodo and answer the questions that are left for you. And Mr. Volkman will see you in class.